Back in 2015, District 9 and Chappie director Neil Blomkamp teased the world with concept art for a fifth Alien film, and his efforts were met with great enthusiasm from the fandom and Fox alike. Within 2 years, the film, codenamed Red Harvest, went from greenlit to positively abandoned. The director suggests that lukewarm reception to Chappie had something to do with it, but mostly it seems that Fox felt more confident that Ridley Scott could deliver greater ROI, despite the fact that he had experienced a similarly lukewarm reception to Prometheus back in 2012. It is my opinion that when faced with a financial decision, Fox aimed to play it safe, much like the decision to cancel Sarah Connor Chronicles over a Joss Whedon property. And in doing so, they once again bet on the wrong pony. Alien Covenant was released in May of 2017, and shortly thereafter, the Alien franchise was unceremoniously thrown on the pyre, along with all the other beloved Fox properties that they had chosen to unalive.
Cast it into the fire!
Was it Ridley alone that killed his franchise? I don't think so. He had accomplices. Fox Damage Control saw the property pass from one hack writer to the next in an effort to try and recreate what worked in those early Alien films. Desperately trying to recreate the lightning in the bottle that was 1979's Alien. I believe they heard the cries in the wilderness of those who did not enjoy Prometheus and tried to pander to them, and in doing so, they Rise of Skywalkered themselves before that was even a thing.
In the latest Rise of Skywalker clip released, the group realizes that the stormtroopers have jetpacks and can fly now. What was your first reaction upon seeing that?
They fly now.
He forgot.
Hot take. I like Prometheus. Despite not directly being an Alien film, and despite its flaws, it had a distinct look, intrigue, great world building, scares, horrific creatures, and the hope and promise of exploring the franchise in new and exciting ways. According to Wikipedia, as early as 2012, Ridley said a sequel would follow Shaw, the protagonist of Prometheus, to her destination. Because if it is paradise, paradise cannot be what you think it is. Paradise has a connotation of being extremely sinister and ominous. Early on, Scott stated the film would feature no xenomorphs, as he wanted to phase the xenomorph out to focus instead on David 8, whose AI is the new alien lifeform. However, Scott later made contradictory statements confirming the xenomorph's presence in the film, mainly due to the feedback of Prometheus.
What if they know better than us?
At the time, Ridley was in early talks with the original actors and screenwriter Damon Lindelof, who would later decide to part ways. Between 2013 and 2015, the script for Prometheus 2 would undergo several rewrites. The initial story was written by Transcendent scribe Jack Pegler in 2013, followed by rewrites from screenwriter Michael Green in 2014. Apparently things didn't go so well, as a new script from Dante Harper was written, and extensive rewrites were done by Star Trek Nemesis scribe John Logan. Prometheus 2 would eventually become Alien: Paradise Lost, until they finally settle on Alien Covenant. The end result is a disjointed mess that resolves none of the setup from the previous film. Whether they had written themselves into a corner or not is debatable, but what is clear is that the end goal was to get a short-haired woman on a ship with an alien so that she could blow it out in airlock.
This is an emergency.
Not much is known about the story or concept. The film never made it past an 8 to 10 page treatment, according to Ridley Scott, although Sigourney Weaver and James Cameron both claimed to have read the script and loved it. James even called it gangbusters.
Sounds like a conversation for your OBGYN.
We know Blomkamp was motivated by his love of the first two films and a desire to give the beloved characters from Aliens a proper send-off. This film would have been set roughly 20 years after the events of Aliens, bypassing Alien 3 and Resurrection altogether. The concept art features an appropriately aged Ripley, a battle-scarred Hicks, and Nuked, somewhere in her mid to late 20s. This alone was enough to warm my heart after the tragic ends of each of these characters in the maligned third film. The art also features what I would assume to be the ubiquitous Weyland-Yutani Corps, some androids, mercs, another derelict craft, all fairly stock alien stuff, but then there was stuff like this. Neil was quoted as saying, So I had this idea for a story set in the world of those first two films that was not a continuation of James Cameron's. It was just in the world of it, and it had a totally different character that was the lead character. Because my assumption was that Sigourney would never make another one, and I told her about it on Chappie, and she was like, no, I actually would make another one because I feel like Ripley's story didn't end correctly. I was like, okay, that's amazing. So I went back to Vancouver, and while I was editing Chappie, I started to think about what I would do with Sigourney as basically a sequel to James Cameron's film. I spent about a year working on it with only Sigourney knowing, and I hired one really awesome concept artist. We put together essentially a script and all the artwork, and that's what I went to 20th Century Fox with. They seemed really into it, and then Ridley came on as producer, and then it just unraveled. Before I get into the plot, let's talk about the passage of time. The film would be roughly 20 years after they are rescued from the events at Hadley's Hope. I have to imagine that the Sulaco is eventually boarded by a rescue crew, where the ship simply returns its passengers back to Gateway Station, and they all find their way back to Earth after a debriefing, quarantine, etc. Assuming all goes well, Ripley was promised a full pardon and restoration of her flight privileges in the last film. Assuming the loss of the atmosphere processor and colony aren't billed to her, I imagine a scenario where she's free to resume her career, should she choose to. I suspect she'd become a lone wolf and choose to work as an independent contractor, unless she chooses to learn a new skill set, which I highly doubt she'd have the motivation for. I doubt the events of the film would set the company back, so they likely still exist in some capacity. And if not, another would just try and take up the mantle, I'm sure. Hicks seemed to be a lifer in the military, and despite the events of the previous film, I suspect he returned to active duty, or was likely given an office job and the promise of a pension as remuneration. I don't see a life for Ripley and Hicks despite their on-screen chemistry. I suspect that Ripley would need to spend a good amount of time finding herself again after the loss of her daughter, and partner/husband, presumably. I suspect the trauma of the situation leaves lasting psychological effects on all involved, Newt especially, leaving societal integration difficult. Newt had lost her family at Hadley's Hope, so her options were likely limited. If Ripley chose not to adopt her, she would end up in the foster care system and be bounced around until she aged out. I'm hoping the former, with all the trauma she'd been through. She'd need counseling and support above and beyond what the system would normally be able to provide. Michael Biehn stated in interviews that Newt would play a prominent role, perhaps having the baton passed down to her for future projects, but she isn't featured in the bulk of the concept art, so I'll have to take that with a grain of salt. Newt calling the aged protagonist to action seems like the appropriate call to action trope. Now, onto the plot. If I had to guess, the company is once again trying to obtain alien technology, and Ripley and Hicks are either called upon, or they make it their duty to, end corporate interest in the xenomorph once and for all. I'm not certain if Weyland-Yutani is the company in question. The logo isn't seen anywhere in the artwork. The only mention is a piece entitled Weyland, which might refer to one of the people in the frame, or the company whose building contains the artificial nature park. Have our heroes made it their life's work to end corporate greed, or have they had just enough bullshit to decide to live day to day? I feel like Ripley would see the futility and just move on. At some point, there is a call to action. The characters stop believing the lie that the world is right, or that the xenomorph threat isn't real until confronted with new information. The duo then suit up, and it appears that Ripley enlists the aid of an android, Jax, despite her past convictions. They acquire some artillery and prepare for eco-terrorism. I can't picture any of the main protagonists working for the evil corporation in question, but having Newt wanting to dismantle the company that killed her family from the inside has a certain poetry to it. I suspect, if anything, that she would be an eco-terrorist or activist of some kind. I'm hoping that the company has moved away from bioterrorism as their reason for lust for the creature, because it's been done to death. I suspect things go south when a third faction butts in looking to ape the technology for themselves. They likely become involved midway through the protagonist's mission, throwing in a wrench that ultimately leads to the creature getting out from containment and breeding. The android for hire, or repurposed android, takes out some of the mercs, and there appears to be two versions of the droid, one with and without hair. Perhaps one is a military model, where the other is a civilian model. Concept art shows a type of space jockey armor that has a pilot mode. I'm assuming that this is reverse engineered so that a human can interface with the alien technology. Another artist created half-measure creatures. It's possible that the company is trying to recreate the creature itself for their same old purposes, or they were trying to create a hybrid that could also interface with the jockey technology, until settling on the human-alien hybrid exoskeleton. We see a vessel similar to the derelict alien, the ship in Prometheus. In the art it appears to have an organic covering, but that could just be the artist's brush technique and not an indication that the ship was molding. It's likely that what the company is after is either flight technology or whatever other secrets the ship might carry. Ridley Scott had speculated that the ship was meant to carry a weapon, and it couldn't be contained. which is how it ended up crashing on LV-426 in the first place. I doubt anyone would be chasing the origin of either the jockey race or Xenomorph itself. Further death and destruction wouldn't fare well on any year-end reporting. The piece featuring the craft is entitled Factory, which either implies that the craft is being manufactured, retrofitted, or the craft is going to be dismantled for reverse engineering. More of a stretch? The ship may be biomechanical and is in the process of being grown. The ship isn't of the same species as the Xenomorph, so this is quite a stretch, but the original space jockey definitely has a mechanical organic slant. It appears that the corpse of the creature was either fused to his seat to perform whatever basic function was required, or that's just merely how the creature existed. There is a curious monolithic structure in the Wayland art piece. Years of sci-fi movies have me thinking of a portal or something along those lines, but I doubt very much that this is the case. Perhaps it is a futuristic boring device. In the artwork fire area, it appears that the Queen is nearing it, and is taken out by an automated sentry cannon. Could that make it a weird teleport/space elevator? I feel like that's quite the stretch for the franchise. Along with the corporate building is an offshore rig, likely an isolated location where illegal bioweapons testing is being done, or is to be hosted. I suspect that the mercenary team is looking to acquire the alien for the tried-and-true reasons Weyland-Yutani did in the past. Bioweapons, medical, bioengineering, who knows? They appear to throw a wrench in Ripley and Hicks's plan, and as a result, new facehuggers, trematodes, are unleashed, and things go awry. An android is destroyed, its gland is later removed. I can't imagine a biological reason for this, so there must be data stored in this particular component of the droid that needs to be acquired after its death. Oh, and Hicks has an alien gun. Something salvaged from the derelict? Probably. At some point, Ripley is alone and sets fire to the Anchor compound after science experiments go awry. The acid eating away at the bombs leads me to believe that the ammunition was detonated ahead of schedule, and Ripley had to improvise. Do I believe that the others perished? No, just that Ripley was once again forced to go it alone, while Hicks performed another function during their operation. There is concept art of Ripley with an improvised suicide vest, but I'm not certain that it has a plot function. It might just be cool for the sake of being cool. But it would make sense if their plan A failed, that plan B would be total destruction no matter the cost. There's also a weird Queen mech armor, which likely exists just because Neil has a mech suit in all of his movies. I suspect a Queen gets loose at some point. We do see it in two separate locations, the tower and the Anchor, and I believe she's trying to ascend an elevator of some kind, and this is where she's intercepted by Ripley in the mech suit. The suit is featured in Battle Against an Alien Queen, but I doubt that was the intention of the armor. More likely it was meant so that humans could observe the species safely, Richard Attenborough style. The armor doesn't even seem to be necessary, as it appears to be automated turrets that take out the errant Queen without an issue. Oh, and there's a totally cool-looking melting man. Reminds me of the deleted scene of Dallas being turned into an egg from Alien. And this guy.
The incredible melting man is the first new horror creature.
The Space Station Montero. Plot function could be nothing more than a way station where signals are bounced off of, similar to Bishop calling down remote drones and aliens. It could be a storehouse for corporate tech, or an off-world playground for evil corporate stuff. It could also just be an establishing shot. Who knows? I'm sure the art only covered a fraction of the film, and there's likely huge swaths that were not represented. Do I see potential in the art? Yes. Do I feel there's too much ground being retread? Also yes. Sigourney maintained that Neil was aiming to do new things, so perhaps the best was yet to come. At the end of the day, I think the fans just wanted a happy, or happier ending for our beloved characters. I am hoping that Neil saw to that in his script. I feel like Rest for Ripley would be appropriate. There's nothing worse than reliving the same nightmare, or having a character be dusted off just to be tortured with the same trauma again and again. Closure should have been the theme for the project.
His stories, which are sort of set in the near present.
Now, why does any of this matter? Why do I care? As a child growing up in the 80s, there was nothing more exciting than visiting the local video store, checking out the backs of all the horror and sci-fi VHS boxes, and being whisked away to the new fantastical worlds outside of a gray, dull suburbia. Well, nothing apart from sneaking over to the X-rated section where all the naughty stuff was covered in neon no-no stickers. I digress. As a child, I'd always end up with a plastic shopping bag full of age-appropriate viewing material, and while that was fine, the alluring call of the unknown always beckoned. I spent years wondering what awaited on those forbidden reels of Mylar that lay outside of my reach, until one day. Of all the tantalizing box art and all the properties, nothing called to me more than the slipcover for Alien. Most of the other covers tried way too hard, and you just knew that what's inside didn't match the cover. But with Alien, so little was given, making it all the more tantalizing and mysterious. The most prescient memories I have are the scenes of the derelict and the space jockey that appear in the first act when the crew of the Nostromo set down on LV-426 for repairs. There was so much world building left to the imagination. Suffice to say, the film had a huge impact on me. Of all the beloved sci-fi properties from the 80s, I obsessed over the Alien films the most.
Come on.
I remember the heartache and nihilism of Alien 3, and the confusion and disappointment of Alien Resurrection, but that didn't deter my love of the original two films.
Man, that shit is not easy to come by.
Coincidentally, one of my favorite video game franchises was also influenced by Alien. The tense atmosphere, desolate alien worlds, claustrophobia, and badass heroine of the Metroid series had Alien in its DNA. So what does this trip down memory lane have to do with anything? I'm trying to paint a picture for the love I've carried for the property all these years. I want you all to understand the pain of love and loss. I want you to understand how gutted I would feel each time the franchise was revisited, each time Fox decided to wake it from hibernation, dress it up in garish street clothes, and pimp it out for a quick buck.
Send in the Marines!
So, is there anything else to look forward to? Is this truly game over, man?
Feel pretty shit now, man. You finished? That's it.
A few efforts were made in recent years to drum up excitement for the property. The most notable efforts are Alien Isolation. After the dismal failure of Alien's Colonial Marines, Sega published the ultimate love letter to fans of the first film. Isolation is a survival horror game set 15 years after the events of the first film, and it chronicles the lengths Amanda Ripley goes to determine the fate of her mother, who never returned home. Alien III audio drama. Of all the aborted Alien 3 scripts, fans seem to enjoy the William Gibson script the most. It's been available in many formats over the years, but in 2019 the second and edited and more stripped-down version of the script was turned into an Audible original audiobook with Michael Biehn and Lance Henriksen reprising their roles.
I read it and I went, this is reminiscent, but there's a turn in the road with this that really surprised me. One of the creatures hid on board the dropship. It emerged when we docked with the
Alien, FX TV series. The long-gestating project, helmed by Noah Hawley, is underway. Scripts have been written, and production is slated to begin shortly. Noah is a true artist, and has already shown his mastery of the format, with his spin on Fargo, and his highly original take on the Marvel comic property Legion, which is a personal favorite of mine, and the best Marvel show to date, bar none. Alien Romulus. Fede Alvarez, helmer of the Evil Dead reboot and Don't Breathe, is helming a film set in the Alien universe. No stranger to horror, I feel that Fede is an excellent choice.
There has to be a way out of here.
Next to nothing is known at this time, although we have been made privy to some of the casting. I feel that each iterative Alien film is likely to contain the same core elements: female protagonist, sketchy android, alien loose in a claustrophobic environment, and an all-powerful company looking to harness the power of the creature for their own tired purposes. But fingers crossed.
I knew exactly what to do, but in a much more real sense, I had no idea what to do.
The Dark Horse comic series tried to put new and inventive spins on the property after the second film. I wish filmmakers would take a cue from some of the more popular tales, such as Of all the comics, the one I'd want to see the most would be Stronghold, mostly because it has a really bizarre and entertaining concept. At some point, synthetic aliens are created. We see Jerry, the synthetic alien that cracks wise, smokes cigars, and blasts xenomorphs with a pulse rifle. He's a synthetic alien well-versed in manners. Man, I almost forgot to mention, Walter Hill and David Giler wrote a script back in 2020 featuring Sigourney Weaver once again, with the super cryptic and weird taglines, "In space, no one can hear you scream. In space, no one can hear you dream." And then a quote from Edgar Allan Poe, "All that we see or seem is but a dream within a dream." I'm guessing they were also going to erase Alien 3 and 4, and apparently the only people interested in making this film are Walter Hill and David Giler, because Disney definitely passed on it after they acquired Fox. Good lord, once again that was way too much video, and, thanks for sticking around, if you did. If not, then no big deal. If you think my speculation sucked and you have better ideas, please let me know, because there's definitely stuff I missed.